Welcome to Cybersecurity Sense, a weekly podcast providing updates and insight into the latest in cybersecurity. Brought to you by LBMC Information Security. Now, here's your host.
Hi, my name's Drew Hendrickson. I'm a shareholder with LBMC Information Security. I help lead our organization's efforts around GDPR and GDPR compliance, and I'm happy to be here today.
I'm glad you're here today. We've been talking about GDPR. Now, in a nutshell, really quick, what is it if in case someone is just now joining us?
Yeah, the General Data Protection Regulation deals with the rights of the EU citizen and their information or their right to privacy.
So with this third part in the series, we've gone through, we've talked already about what is this, if it applies to me, and likely if you're doing, and there's three things, so you can say those right now, but if you're doing anything that's yes to these, you apply.
Right. Are you established in the EU? Are you monitoring behavior in the EU? Or are you offering services to EU citizens?
So the most recent, the session right before this, we talked about several different, maybe a half dozen things to consider, everything from what is personal data in their eyes, all the way down to data consent. And that's what's bringing us to this. Mm-hmm. Now, this is not necessarily the final session, but for now, this is going to be a nice little bookend for this series. So DSAR, Data Subject Access Requests. What are these? When do these come into the picture? And then let's talk about all the different access rights.
Yeah, so individuals have certain rights under GDPR. They call them Data Subject Access Rights, and they can make certain requests, and there's 8 of those. So they have the right to be informed, they have the right of access, right to rectification, right to erasure, or as it's more commonly known, the right to be forgotten. They have the right to the restriction of processing, they have the right to data portability, the right to object, and the rights relating to automated individual decision-making. And really the most common thing there that people might be familiar with is profiling.
Right. So now, when do these come into play? From the very beginning? Is there a certain time that this is activated?
Yeah, so May 25th, when the GDPR is activated, these data subject access rights go into place.
It's a real thing. It's happening.
The real thing. So organizations need to be prepared to respond to any of those 8 rights that a data subject or customer or individuals whose information they might have. They need to be prepared to deal with those types of requests, because once that request comes in, you only have 30 days to respond.
What's that request look like? Is it a formal request? And within that 30 days, what are you having to send to them? And then after that, we'll talk about specifically the different rights.
So that's going to vary by organization, and we can talk about that more after we talk about the rights as far as how they can prepare to respond to each one of these requests. How are they going to do that and make it easy on their customers as well as themselves?
All right, we'll get to that in just a moment. So the first one, to be informed. Let's just walk through these and and hearing it from your vantage point. It's so much easier to hear that snapshot of what it's all about.
Yeah, so the right to be informed is fairly easy. It's pretty much what it's saying, but it's really, what is my personal data being used for? Who's it being shared with? So if they have my information, if an organization has my information, I have the right to contact them under GDPR if it's applicable to you. I have the right to contact them and say, hey, what are you using my data for?
Wow. Now, when they have the data, that's being stored somewhere. So when you say to access, how does this come into play next?
Yeah, so the right of access is actually obtaining the information that they have on me. So I can request and say, hey, I would like to see all the information that you have on me. So then an organization needs to go dig through every nook and cranny of where they have my data, and they have to be able to send that to me, and they have to be able to send it to me in a readable electronic format unless I've requested it otherwise.
Readable format meaning it's not mumbo jumbo? Or it's not a bunch of it's not coded?
Right, it's easy for me you can email it to me and I know exactly what it is. So it's in a standard form that you've created that helps me understand exactly what you have on me. It can't be cryptic.
Is there easy ways to create that kind of information? Like how? Because the organization is responsible to be able to do that.
That's right. The organization is responsible for that. So we talked about data protection impact assessments before.
There's templates you could use to try to make it easier and
establishing formal data classification within your organization, You really want good data governance within your organization to determine where is that data. Oh, and by the way, if you think this is another way that your organization can make money, if these requests start coming in, you can't. You have to provide them free of charge.
Right. Wow. Okay. Rectification. What is this one, and what do we got?
So that one's pretty simple. If I have obtained my information and it's incorrect, I have the right to get it correct. So I can reach back out and say, hey, you spelled my first name wrong, or this isn't my address. I have the right to make sure that you correct that information.
That's so interesting. But hey, I mean, you got rights. Wow. Now, to erasure.
To erasure is a little bit different. So this is more commonly known, like I said, as the right to be forgotten. So the right to be forgotten is not an absolute right. There's only a few instances where it definitely has to come in place. If I'm the data subject and I've withdrawn consent, or if it's no longer necessary for what it was collected for, if I object to the processing of that information, if it's been unlawfully obtained, they go through this for several of these rights, but anything unlawful, I have the right to make sure that you're not utilizing that information anymore. If I have a legal obligation and I need you to erase it based on that, or if it's processed in the relation to the offer of information society services to a child. So there's some pretty specific stuff around children within the GDPR, especially under the age of 16. Those rights are taken very seriously. Parental consent, all the way down to consent that needs to be by a parent. And, that information can be erased immediately if I'm under 16. I have that right to reach out and say, forget me.
That makes sense. So up next, we've got restriction of processing. What does that mean?
Yeah, so there's a few different things to consider there. If I contest the accuracy of my personal information, I define the controller as the entity that has your information. They can make sure that it's correct or it's not correct. So they do get some time there, but I can restrict the processing of that information, especially if it's not. If the processing, again, unlawful, if it's unlawful, I have that right. Or if the controller or the entity just no longer needs that information for what it was originally obtained for, I can say stop processing that information. And again, remember, processing under the GDPR can include storage. So if you're storing that information or keeping that information and it's no longer needed for what I originally gave it to you for, you have the right to say stop keeping that information.
Wow. Data portability.
Yeah, so data portability is just ensuring that the data is portable. So a good example here is people shop insurance companies all the time in America, right? It seems like every year I'm making sure that my cost is accurate, that I'm getting the best deal that I can get. So all of that information should be very portable. So it should be in an understandable format across the industry. So if I want to leave this company and put my data over here with this company, it's a very easy and smooth process.
All right. Now, the right to object.
Yeah, that one's pretty interesting. So a data subject has the right to object if the processing of their data meets 3 requirements. So it doesn't have to meet all 3 of them, but just one of those 3. If it's done for purposes of direct marketing, I have the right to object. If it's done for purposes of research, scientific, historical research, statistics, anything like that, if there's a legitimate interest, a legal reason. So I can object to the processing of that information or the storage of that information under those 3 scenarios.
All right. And to restrict automated individual decision making. Yeah, walk me through what that means.
Yeah, so the most relatable scenario there is profiling. So if you're collecting my information and pooling me based on gender or race or religion or anything like that, I can say, hey, you need to stop doing that. You're no longer allowed to process my information that way.
Wow. Before we talk about how to prepare to handle all of these, the DSARs, when you're reading through all of these rights that are associated with what we just read through, it's definitely a flagship. It's definitely a newer way to be thinking. How do you think companies are reassessing this new mindset?
Yeah, the main thing that they need to be thinking about is, how am I going to take in all of these requests and how am I going to reply? And how am I going to reply within 30 days? Because with all of those, you have 30 days to respond. So they need to understand where all that information is. And again, either working with a privacy professional or performing their own data protection impact assessment is going to be a great place to start.
Because if they don't do it, can sync.
Yeah,
quick.
you very well could.
Paperwork and requests.
If they came out and fined you now, I do want to be somewhat realistic. I don't know if all the fines will be that high. I think that they'll be somewhat reasonable, and they're going to go after some of the big boys first. This is Drew's opinion.
Who has the resources to probably they should be preparing. Is
more
what,
than likely,
possibly.
It's not even
speculation, of course.
Right. My speculation. This isn't anything from the EU, but they're probably going to go after the big guys first. Not even because they're able to maybe pay those fines, but because they're the ones who are probably being the most egregious and not complying with GDPR potentially. And then they're going to go after the organizations that are getting the most complaints. So there's going to be a formal process where individuals can go to a data protection authority and complain and say, hey, I don't think this company is treating my information the way that they should be. So the higher that complaint stat gets on you, they're probably going to go after those organizations first. That doesn't mean you should ignore it. You should take action immediately, because who knows who they're going to go after. You never know. I can't predict the future.
All right. So let's start talking about preparing to handle these requests.
Yeah, so the first thing is just locating the data. We've talked about that a couple of times. But you need to know where the information is. And IT or your tech group, they may know where some of that information is, but they don't know everything, because some business users manage systems themselves. Some individuals get emails, and then what do they do with that information? They save it on their desktop. They save it out in Google Drive or Dropbox or something like that. So you're going to have to do some interviewing within your own organization to understand where are all the possible areas of where that personal data might be.
What else do you have? What are some other ways to try to be thinking in advance to prepare?
Yeah, well, we teased it a little bit at the beginning, but you need a clear mechanism for those requests. So whether that's a form on your website, if it's something within an app that you manage, if it's a dedicated email address, you need to have a dedicated way and an easy way for an individual.
This can't be buried somewhere.
It doesn't need to be buried. And the reason it doesn't need to be buried is because if I do want to make that request and I can't find it, I may go make a complaint against you, or I may send it via snail mail. And even when it goes through snail mail, you only have 30 days to respond. And I don't know about you, but I don't look through, outside of bills, I'm not looking through my mail that much as I used to. And
wow.
I think a lot of companies are doing that too. So, to be able to respond timely, if it's coming through snail mail, you might not understand exactly how to do that. And the other thing is, if you don't have a clear and cut way, it may be coming in a variety of different places, and then you have ad hoc procedures, and that's never good.
Yeah. Now, how do you do you anticipate there'd be any kind of problem, someone requesting data, but it's not actually their data?
Yeah, definitely. All right. Identity theft is a real thing, and this could be a good way for somebody to do that, especially just
send me all my data.
Exactly. Send me this person's information. So you definitely want to implement a process to verify that user's identity, whether that be some type of two-factor authentication, whether it be secret questions. You want to do something to ensure that you believe that this is the individual talking to you.
Wow. The word I'm thinking about is just accountability. It's just all this is. It's wow, man. So we're starting to get closer to wrapping up, but as you're thinking about, you're getting all of these data subject access requests, how do you make sure you're doing it in the same way to where you can refine the system, you can create this process?
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
Yeah, no matter how your organization chooses to respond, you definitely want to have governing policies and procedures over this. So you're not dealing with it on an ad hoc basis or on an individual basis. You want to make sure that not only have you developed policies, but that you formally communicated it out to anyone and everyone that could potentially receive such a request. So if I've established a clear mechanism and it's a dedicated email address, it's coming to 3 or 4 individuals, but I'm someone else within the company that gets that request, do I know who to forward it to? Do I know how to deal with that? You want to make sure that you've got good policies in place. And then lastly, before you send that out, you want to make sure that you perform review on that, right? You want to make sure that you're giving, if I ask for Drew's data, I want to make sure I'm not sending out Clark's data, right? I want to make sure that I'm not giving up any of my own sensitive information or, company secrets or anything like that. So you want a review process in place to make sure that you're only giving out the information that you should be.
All this is so much, and I know companies under this under GDPR as the overall umbrella. There's a new accountability, there's new responsibilities, there's new processes that need to happen. So I want to make sure to make it really easy just to connect with your team here at the end. How can someone, if all the stuff seems overwhelming, if it seems scary, how can they connect with you and your team to just walk along this new journey?
Yeah, so they can visit LBMC Information Security, and they can navigate to our GDPR page from there. Or if you just search LBMC GDPR, it's the very first page that comes up. Click on that. It's our landing page for GDPR. There's a lot of blogs out there. There's contact information, and anyone can always reach out to me personally as well.
Well, Drew, thank you so much for taking the time to just unpack this stuff. It's a lot to take in, but I think you did a really great job covering in this series what we need to be thinking about. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.